So now you've learned, or you've got the perfect blueprint how to digitalize. And I'll tell you now some very hands-on basic things on how to build a platform. We've started about 8 years ago. A couple of you might know us. Very small, sent some shoes around. And then over the years became rather big and yeah, we have, of course, the idea to dominate the fashion retail industry. That's maybe a bit too audacious, but we'll try, at least. Now, I'll give you a very brief intro into what we're currently doing. We've been for, as said, 8 years a retailer, not a very traditional one, but a digital retailer. I wouldn't say we totally transformed the industry, but we had a fair share in what's happened over the last 10 years, especially in German e-com retail, but also all over Europe. Germany's been, of course, quite ahead, but if you look then closer into markets like Italy, Poland, that's very interesting for us because there we are more or less leading the first wave with the retail model. But at some point in time, we thought of, after being public, what's the next step? How can we sustain the growth rates we had over the years? And what would be the right tool to further, and then we're at digitalization, digitalize the fashion industry. And for us, a platform model is the perfect choice for that. I'll lead you a bit through our thinking there and what we, through a couple of quite painful steps, learned over the time. All right, the most important thing is, if you're thinking about a platform and you're already a successful company, then this is maybe the hardest part. You really have to think or rethink the business you're in. You have to think about what are the things that are inefficient in our business. What are the things that are really hard to solve for a single player? If you're already successful in the industry, you actually have a lot of good insights there. If you're not, then it helps to get this insight from somewhere. But what's really important is to really understand the fundamentals, and there we're actually not talking tech, we're more talking economics, understanding the fundamentals of how a marketplace, how a platform, how a business model works. And it always boils down to the question, what's the inefficiency we will solve? And is there something in our industry we can solve through a networking approach, through a platform approach, that wouldn't be accessible to other players in the market by solving it themselves, or by the individual players? That's very different, and I think that's the key part where platforms are different from traditional lead generation models you had, I don't know, 10 years ago, is this efficiency question. What usually lead gen model solves is that you don't have, like the individual players in the marketplace don't know each other too well to choose the right partner to do business. Be it one single transaction, if you're a consumer shopping for something, or it could also be a longer relationship. In a lead gen model, it's always about connecting people, but from there on, you're actually not owning the transaction anymore. That's something you see, I don't know, in recent platforms like those connecting you with a cleaning service. After you have the first connection, it's actually more worthy for you to have a direct connection to this cleaning lady you signed up through the service, because you want this person to clean, like the same person to clean your flat every week. If you want to build a platform, you have to think differently. You really have to think about things where you say, what's something I can solve for this market the individual players cannot solve in a continuous relationship by themselves? And if you're looking deeper into it, it's really asking yourself, how can I, if I came up with one of these inefficiencies, I really have to think about how can I make this accessible for the customer, and how can I connect the customer with that? How can I turn this into value for the customer? And the key question there is, what are customers looking for? Interestingly, and that's trivia, no one would have built an iPhone if they asked the customers before. It would just be faster phones or smaller phones. You have to look deeper than what the customers actually tell you. You need to understand, what are customers looking for? You need to be out there, understand them. Could be in on digital media platforms, could be in the social networks, could be on the streets. We're doing it actually quite a lot on the streets, getting really close to the customer, talking to them all over Europe, all the time. That's one of the best money you can spend. And you need to see what are customers asking for? Sometimes this question is rather implicit. This is not a question. I just saw this cool sneaker. You can directly answer to that. We can imply from that a question that the customer actually, or this person actually wants to know where this person, where he or she could get the sneaker. You could go out there and directly answer it. And from there, a conversation starts that's actually quite interesting if you look deeper in how to build a platform. If you just showed this person, well, this is this kind of in our example here, it's the person's looking for a sneaker, and we're just saying, well, it's this very specific sneaker. It's the Superstar, the super color Superstar, actually. Something that's very hard to find. It's also hard to find it online. We could say, well, costs 100 euros. You want to get it? And the person says, yeah, sure, but I need it now. Next question, how can I solve that? And that's then where the thinking starts on how to turn a simple consumer question into a bigger marketplace. We're not the only ones having these shoes in stock. They're actually more than 90% of our industry is still offline. How about connecting this customer with someone out there in the industry? In this case, in Münchstraße. And then the next step is, maybe the customer says, yeah, that's nice, I don't want to go there, it's quite too far for me. Couldn't you just ship it to me? That's actually quite convenient with you. And then we're turning it into a model where it's actually where we could say, in this case, I mean, this is of course a very practical example from the daily work, where we'd say, well, sure, we organize delivery for you. And then the business model starts to kick in. The shop by themselves would be very difficult for them as the supply partner on the platform to directly address this customer. You need to have quite some reach for that. That's something we can provide. That's something the individuals, especially smaller retailers, can't really build up, also not in the long term. We can provide them with that. Secondly, if the shop now wants to ship something to this customer, of course they can use DHL, or they could use a bike messenger. But it's of course a lot more efficient if you do this in large organized networks and then look into like what we, like back in my economy studies, always called economies of scale or economies of scope. That's something you can then realize in a larger business model. Now, from there on, this just as a setting, we're talking now how to put this platform into life. Platforms are quite different from B2B or B2C models. Because what you do is you're always thinking into how can I balance the parties, and what are these, back to the initial point, what are these, what are the values I can create, or what's the value proposition I can create on a recurring in a recurring model, where I can really seize or lock them into something they couldn't get somewhere else, and where they, and it's the important part, where they over time invest into your platform. B2B models and B2C models are usually between two companies. In the platform world, you have at least one of the parties, if you want to be successful, one of the parties needs to invest into your platform. This is a very good KPI or metric to understand if you're successful. And if you're thinking more into that, and if you think about the positive values you can create, or your players are looking for, both on the demand side, looking for something, and on the supply side, wanting to sell something, might be a service, might be a good, might be just getting reach. If you create these positive values and combine them into a model that's only possible because of some of the aspects you bring to the table, be it reach, be it a unique position in the end leveraging economies of scale, be it something that provides them with this recurrent positive value to their business. Then you've got a model where you can start to build the platform. That's now the rather theoretical part, where you have to think of how do we make this work, and then the actual work actually kicks in. You have to make sure you're building the right thing. What you as a platform usually do, and platforms are the infrastructure of the 21st century, or digital platforms at least. We can look closer into what are these inefficiencies and how do we solve them. We're then going into the design phase and thinking what's the technical infrastructure we need to build. that enables all these different participants to get to connect with each other first, find the right partner. That's in a B2B, like if you're a B2B platform, that's more like a very conscious decision process. In a B2C platform, that's usually driven by your market mechanics. And then thinking of how can we serve these customers and partners quite well. If you've solved that, you're starting to build the infrastructure. And that's where, in the end, I think I've just been announced as, that we would have about 700 engineers. We're now rather close to 1,000. That's where then all the work goes in, building scalable systems that enable these transactions, and more importantly, that provide the different partners with the right tools to do business on your platform. To do that, you need to really analyze the habits of your target groups. Analyze what are the frictions they have in this process, and provide them then with the right solutions to solve these frictions, to tap into the potential of your market. So that's first, and for us that's very important to always point this out. And I think that's true to every single marketplace out there. You first have to cater to those who leave the money with you. In the end, put customer satisfaction, those who are actually purchasing or and it's in the end purchasing something on your platform, put them first. Think of what are their preferences, and these preferences then determine the diversification of the portfolio of your whole platform. A lot of channels can help you with that. I mean, you can go digital first, you can go mobile first, you can build something that's also working a lot in the offline world quite a lot, depends on your model. But it's important to think of these different needs of your customers and really try to satisfy them where they are. Then on the partner, or like on the supply side of a platform, we call them partners in our world. It's important to re-enable them to do business. How can you share experience you have got, in our case, from how we ran a retail business model before, but also from something you can deduct from the platform? How can you share this expertise with the different parties to become successful? What's really important there is to create a level playing field. It's extremely difficult for us because we're still having quite a big retail or wholesale business where we own goods that we sell, to put both the nascent partner business or marketplace business on the same level as this wholesale business we're running on our own. If you're not creating on the partner side a model where partners can invest and where they trust you, that it's right for them from a strategic point of view to invest into your platform, and it's very difficult to get the flywheel going. It's really becoming bigger and bigger. You need these partners to serve or to supply something customers can actually buy, and for that they need to invest into your platform. If you are prioritizing your own needs or needs of certain partners over a lot of others, that's making this drive for investment and the drive for competition, like for really becoming good in the environment you're setting, makes it a lot more difficult and to kick this off. When you start to build your platform and you start to implement the first steps of the value chain you want to cover, you very quickly realize that there are a lot of other steps as well. And then you can look deeper into how can we, or how might we solve these steps as well with implementing marketplace dynamics there as well, getting partners in. In our case, that's not just fashion brands selling their goods. It's also, for example, bloggers who run or who star in campaigns for brands, who give them a more authentic picture towards the customer. It could also be, or in our cases, for example, also stylists who provide service through our platform and helping customers to pick the right outfits. So that's when you start implementing, then very quickly a lot of additional steps come into place, and it's really important then again to see, is this really valuable for the customer? Are we solving a problem that's actually there, or is it just something someone wants to offer? And then, and this is then your role, establish this platform as this access point, as the hub that keeps the whole business between all the partners going. It's at the core of the question, what kind of efficiency, but also what kind of distortion in the market could you solve? Can you provide transparency? Can you use your position to make the business for everyone in the marketplace more efficient, cheaper, more convenient? And can you give them access, that's for example in our case, can you give them access to things that are only available at scale? If you're a small shop on our platform selling goods, you get access to rates very, very few companies, for shipping rates, very few companies in Germany, for example, get, because you need a huge volume to get the DHL and Hermeses of this world to offer this volume to you. That's some kind of a scale that's only possible to these businesses through such a platform, and that might even, and then we reach a point where it's really interesting, that might only be possible on such a platform. If you look into the fashion industry, it's very difficult to sell the, let's say, lower price segments online, because due to returns, people try on stuff and then it doesn't fit them, or just because of the margins themselves, it's actually really or commercially not viable to sell this stuff via distance channels. If you get access to better rates, or if you get access to more reach, this at some point becomes profitable, and then smaller players can also participate in the game here. But it goes beyond just giving away access, or just providing people with access to something that's commercially, just from a pure numbers point of game, interesting. What's even more important, and we're seeing this quite a lot with first the larger brands who understood this quite well, but also with with smaller and smaller players now, is getting access to information, getting access to data to drive decision making. If you get access through a platform to, in our case, it's like more than 20 million active customers and their behavior, you can take better decisions. And that's something that's, of course, only available to very few companies, those really big companies. Letting others tap into this golden data bucket is really helpful for them as well. And then, third thing is, of course, as a small player, it's always quite difficult to decide on which of the numerous topics you have to improve you could actually invest. You have limited resources. Investing into these as one player is quite difficult. If you build a platform, if you can tap into something the platform provider, in that case us, can build for a large number of companies to use, or for a large number of users, and thus simple game of economies of scope. We're investing at once, and a lot of people can use it at marginal cost. That's the third dynamic that's really helpful if you want to establish this hub. Now, you're of course not doing this because you're a philanthropist. You want to be success. And the other question is, what is crucial to, from the very beginning, set yourself up for success? As a platform, success is usually first measured in large growth rates and growing your volume continuously. So there's first an important, coming back to the this flywheel you want to keep going. There's first, it's very important that you choose a model in the first place where the different partners can only tap into the value you're creating if they keep on doing business over your platform. If you provide them with so much value that they can't really get out, it wouldn't make sense for them economically or commercially. And due to that, if you reach a state where the players by themselves wouldn't retract, they at some point in time understand this, because they're of course economical players as well, and then you reach this point when they start to invest into your system. It starts very simple. I don't know, Nike has 2 people they just hired for running their business on our platform. That's the first very small investment to the platform. When companies start to invest into connections with your platform, integrate their systems deeper, that's a very good sign for investment into your platform. You understand they see the relationship as a strategic relationship. They want to keep it for a longer time. And that's then a good thing for you. This creates quite a steep lock-in for them that keeps them from going somewhere else and keeps your business for a longer time. And then, if you're looking closer, what's really important to be successful? If you're now thinking about building this platform, it's really understanding what are the core competencies I need to have to be successful. That's in our case maybe at least we believe in Europe quite unique combination of quite a strong entrepreneurial culture, a team that's driven and a team that wants to get things done, but it's, I guess, something lots of companies would say. It's a deep understanding of the industry, and it's a couple of assets we've built. Logistics assets, of course, that we can then offer. It's a huge, expensive footprint we can offer to all the players on the market, on our marketplace, but it's also very good relationships with all the larger players in this industry. And then you have to look deeper into how can I control these partners? That's also a competency you need to build up. There's a tendency, and it's very strong in our company, but I guess in a lot of other cases as well, you can build just a marketplace where usual market mechanisms solve things. If you look into, I don't know, more society, that's usually not working that well. There's frictions in marketplaces, there are marketplace failures, you need to counteract them somehow. It's usually done through regulations or to incentives to incentivize specific positive behavior. What you could always do, and that's something that's the first, let's say, what first intuitively comes to mind is controlling what people do on the platform. Sign off, what kind of, in our case, merchandise they put on a platform. If you're doing more a service model, introducing qualifications, and I don't know, have someone like TÜV or someone like that checking them beforehand if they're living up to a certain level. This is something that's what we learned is very difficult to scale. If you want to really set up yourself for scale, you have to look into how can I install incentivation or incentive mechanisms that address or that frame the overall behavior on the marketplace in a way that you address this inner drive of everyone to be commercially successful towards the target you're having. Meaning, if you don't want to have certain behavior, then make it very expensive to show this behavior. That's a lot simpler to achieve at scale than going in and let's say assessing if people have certain behavior and do some checkoffs and look closer into how they, let's say, do like proper assessment and certifications. It's a lot easier to work with, let's say, with market mechanisms also to solve behavior of people along the line. And then maybe as a very last thing, what's important is to, if you're building a platform, think about long term. How can we set this up in a sustainable way? It wouldn't help too much for your business model if you're just looking into the first, let's say, the first sale the person is doing on the platform, the first transaction two players make on the platform. What's important is to create habits. And that's something where digital translation or the digital transformation that's currently happening is really changing the habits people are having. They're developing completely new loyalties. They are more accustomed to a certain behavior. They are developing new behavior. And you need to understand these habits quickly, monitor your platform very well, and then cater to the needs that are not really fulfilled. That's what we've set up, I'd say, about 12, 14 months ago, and are now spending a lot of work putting into this. It's way from finished, but this is at least the first things we could share.
Well, Philipp has volunteered to make himself available at the speakers meeting point. Meet the speakers. It is out the door here to your right. If you do think of a question that you'd like to ask him, Philipp, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.